Hello and welcome to the Ginposium. With me today is my mother, Julia Nourney. We are here for her to present a talk on blended gin, what that entails, the strengths and very few minimal weaknesses of it. And she will also have an Excel sheet to present to you, which she will guide you through in order for you to maybe realize such a production system for your own distilleries. Without further ado, I will pass the word over to Julia, and she will give us a very brief introduction as to her own person before getting into the topic.
Thank you, Felix. Yes, hello everyone. My name is Julia Nourney, and you can hear from my very strong accent that in total comparison to my son, that my English is a second language, and I have to excuse for that. I hope you can anyhow follow me. First of all, I would like to let you know that I'm in the business now for a little bit more than 28 years. I work with gin now for maybe 10 or 12 years, and the past couple of years I helped a lot of distilleries around the globe developing gin and bringing their gin to the market. Most of them, I must admit, not all of them, but most of them were made in the blended gin kind. So this is why I'm here today. I would like to tell you a little bit about it and about the pros and cons, and how to make them and how to get the most out of it. So when we start with London Dry, I think it's not necessary that I tell you something about London Dry. You all know what it is, but if you imagine that you might be a smaller distiller, a small craft distiller, and you don't have that much money to afford to have a 1-year production in your vessels, that you can be sure that all the botanicals of different quality are mixed very well, and that you have a high consistency. You might consider making your gin as a blended gin, and just to start at a certain point. For example, citrus notes. Most gins have one kind at least of citrus botanical in it, and when you look at their quality, so they are super during winter time. But when you look at citrus fruits during summertime, on one hand they are super expensive, on the other hand the quality is not really good. So when you look, for example, at some herbs, they are great during late summer and when they are harvested fresh. But if you dry them and if you store them at your attic somewhere, they're probably not as good anymore after 9 months or so. And when you look at particular blossoms, they are probably the best in early summer. And if you dry them and leave them somewhere, after a few months, they are not as intense in flavors anymore. So you can see, no matter when you distill your London Dry gin, the quality of these botanicals is quite different. So you have a lot of kind of a seasonal inconsistency with that. And to avoid any big differences from batch to batch, it were necessary that you produce a lot in advance and you store it in big storing vessels, and allow always to mix various distilling batches together. And that's the reason why I particularly prefer blended gins. And when blended gin mean that you have a kind of a basic gin, that means in this basic gin you have all the kinds of botanicals that you can get from a supplier in the same great quality all year round, meaning all the juniper berries and coriander, and also some technical botanicals like angelica root and orris root. And all the other stuff that you need, that are signature botanicals for you because they grow, for example, in your area, and they mirror a little bit the terroir and of your area, of your particular place where your distillery is or where you come from, or they mirror maybe your personal history a little bit, these botanicals, since they have different qualities here throughout the year, you probably distill when they are absolutely the best. That means the signature botanicals maybe during earlier summer or late summer. Citrus fruit is always something that I prefer to distill fresh as well, because whenever you have ever had the possibility to compare distillate made from dried zest with a distillate made with fresh zest, it's such a big difference. So, and that might sound a little bit funny, but I think that distillates made from dried zest, they taste a little bit like dead hamster, and this is not what I like. I think a gin should be fresh and refreshing, and therefore fresh citrus aromas are vital for a good gin. And yeah, so citrus fruits are the best during winter time. We had just talked about it, and therefore why not distilling them fresh when they are the best and the cheapest, by the way. So you end up with maybe a few distillates, a base gin, you end up with a citrus distillate, you might have 2 signature botanicals from your area, and then you have 4 different distillates which you blend together. And the big advantage of that is that you have a very high consistency in taste, because you need to have a little bit of a crystal ball to get an idea of how much you will need for the coming year. Of course, that's true. But if you have that amount of liquid in your storage vessel, each time when you need to bottle again, you have a ready-made, a clear recipe, and then you know exactly, I'm gonna need 20 liters from here and 200 liters from there, and you just mix them together, you blend them together. So that's, for me, is the easiest way. I have a file for you where I can show you a little bit about it that might make you understand much better. So I hope you can see this file. This is part of a bigger file I usually use when I prepare a recipe for a client. So you have here all the distillates we are going to use for the recipe in original strength. So maybe the base gin we had just talked about, they include, this base gin includes juniper, coriander, maybe cardamom, definitely some angelica and orris root, maybe some other botanicals, lemon balm or something. There are various possibilities, but all the botanicals are dried botanicals, which you get from your supplier in a very good quality all year round. Then you have the citrus zest distillate, and then you maybe have 1 or 2 signature botanical distillates here. Each time after distillation, you check the strengths, and if this might change today, maybe we have 82.8 ABV today, you can see that the numbers here are going to change. I show you that again. So the numbers change a little bit, and this is the amount of spirit you're going to need. You have a fixed recipe here. That's why it's marked in red. You should never ever change that recipe here. And if you now would like to bottle some gin and you know exactly you're gonna need 150 liters, you just type it in here, and the program is gonna calculate for you how many liters you're gonna need from your base gin, from your citrus distillate, and from your signature botanical distillates. And it also tells you a little bit about how much water you're gonna need. I would never ever fill that water in one go to the distillate. So I'm a big fan of diluting very, very slowly, but that's another topic we might be able to talk about at another time. But anyhow, so this is the easiest way with that fixed recipe to guarantee that your product is always going to have a big consistency. I just mentioned earlier that this part is only, or this file is only a part of a much bigger file. Usually, I have also here some calculations for 0.7 bottles, 0.5 liter bottles, for miniature bottles or duty-free bottles. So it just for you to have it super easy that if you would like to bottle 200 bottles, you just type it in, and Excel tells you exactly how much liters you need of each distillate. And also part of that file is a forecast that if you have an idea of how much bottles you plan to bottle for the coming year, it's going to tell you exactly how many distilling runs of particular distillates you need to make. So it might tell you then you need to run your still 90 times for base gin and 15 times or 20 times for the citrus distillate. So this is also part of that file usually. And but I think this is a very easy tool to make sure that your gin is always going to taste exactly the same. Yeah.
So
did I forget something?
What you're saying is the main thing about such a system is consistency throughout the year. I think the main takeaway would also be for people watching this that when you take such a system, that a big part of it is just planning ahead, right? Because you want to be able to have a prognosis for the entire year.
Yes, so this is the biggest problem of that system, that you have that, as I mentioned earlier already, that you have that kind of crystal ball to know exactly how many bottles you would like to bottle for the coming year. When you do that forecast, you should be a little positive, because it's better to have more of your signature botanical distillates than not enough, of course. And I also prefer very much, if you have some leftovers from the year before and you do the distillation for the current year again, that you have a mixing of the former distillates with the actual distillates, again, to gain a lot of taste consistency with that. The whole plan of doing such a blended gin has a huge advantage, particularly for smaller producers. When you imagine how long it really takes to make a recipe, and we all know that upscaling is not a really good idea, and it does not really work well. Meaning upscaling, meaning making a recipe development on a smaller still and then using the recipe for a bigger still and just multiplying all the botanicals and the liquid. That's not a good idea, because it's not going to work well. That means you have to do the recipe development on the still you are finally and in the end distilling. Otherwise, the recipe will not end up with the same taste. So if you do that with a London dry gin, it would probably cost you many, many distilling runs to level exactly how much you need of each botanical to have a great taste in the end. With such a blended gin, it's much easier, because the only thing you have to level out is the base gin, and all the other botanicals are distilled on its own, and you blend them later, and the blending work is not that time consuming like the distilling, and it's in the end much cheaper, because you don't need that much raw material. And yeah, so this is one big advantage. The other big advantage is the high consistency of taste from batch to batch. And I think the only disadvantage I can see here is that you need a few more storing vessels to hold all these spirits in over the year. And you need to have a little bit of a calculation beforehand how big they should be. But actually, I think in my opinion, this is the only bad thing with the whole recipe. I particularly be a big fan of blended gin. So I hope you've got an idea of all that. Felix, did I forgot something very important, or?
I don't believe so. I think you've touched on the monetary aspects, the quality assurance aspects. I think you've made a strong case for blended gin today, and perhaps you've preached a little bit and maybe converted some people to what you believe a superior system.
Yeah, just one thing before I forget, whenever you have done such a blended gin, please consider that you can use your base gin, for example, and also your citrus distillate for later developments as well. And so it's quite easy then only to change and to play around and blend with another signature botanical. So you can go further and can maybe do on the base of your standard gin a kind of a seasonal gin, Christmas gin, or whatever. So anyhow, thank you very much for listening and watching. And if you have further questions, please don't hesitate. Just come back to me and contact me over my email address, which you will see in a minute. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.